Welcome back to the Friday show presented by Woodbine Racetrack. This weekend, Saturday, the 10th race of the 11 race card is the final leg of the Triple Crown, the Breeders' Stakes. And Natalie, we've got a horse going for the Triple Crown, Mighty Heart.
Well, we actually have two horses going for two different Triple Crowns this weekend. We have Mighty Heart in the Breeders' Stakes, and we also have Contrail in the Japanese St. Leger, which I believe is on Sunday. So you might have a rare and possibly historical chance to see two Triple Crowns within 24 hours of each other.
Yeah, the Kikuka Sho, the Japanese St. Leger is usually those races go off at about 1:30 or 2 o'clock a.m. Sunday morning Eastern time. If you're out on the West Coast, you have a better chance of catching it. But we're going to talk about each horse. But Contrail, the horse that won the first two legs of the Japanese Triple Crown, is really something else. And it's worth staying up late to watch, or at least to watch the replay the next day. But Mighty Heart, this is a horse that won the Queen's Plate at 13-1 odds. Josie Carroll had another horse in the race who was more fancied, I think, but he went wire to wire that day, 1.25 miles on the Tapeta surface. Now that's one of the things that makes the Canadian Triple Crown so interesting. They start on a synthetic surface, 1.25 miles, then they go to dirt at Fort Erie for the Prince of Wales, 1 3/16 miles, and then they finish up on the turf at 1.5 miles. So what kind of a horse can do all that?
Well, a very versatile horse. And, I think between his first two legs of the Triple Crown, we've seen some versatility from him in terms of his running style. The last out, he had to actually pass a horse at the end instead of getting out in front and having it all his own way. And he sort of looked like he found another gear at the top of the stretch and in the stretch there as well. So that was a strategy that made sense for a shorter race. But as we know from the American Triple Crown, the horses can't always change their running style that easily. So it's, I think, a good sign for him that he's able to do that. And he's got a new challenge ahead of him. But, if he's good enough, he'll find a way to face this one down too.
It's been a while since the Canadians have had a Triple Crown winner. Wando in 2003, I think, was the last one to do it. Before that, Pietski in 1993, Dance Smartly 91, Izvestia 90, with Approval 89. Then you go back to 1963 and then one in 1959. The common thread is that all of those horses that won the Triple Crown were either favorites or fairly well backed for the Queen's Plate. There weren't any 13-1 long shots like Mighty Heart that won the Queen's Plate. So call him an overachiever, or maybe just he was overlooked. Maybe he was overlooked that day, but this might be a chance to beat him.
Yeah, and it's interesting to me that there's been sort of the historical gaps in Canada's Triple Crown, just like there has been for us. We went that 30-some year dry spell between Affirmed and American Pharaoh, and it wasn't quite as long between the winner prior to Wando, but still it's interesting that it's either so challenging nobody can do it for a long time, or seems attainable for sort of a run of years. It's just interesting how racing works sometimes.
When I realized that all the Canadian Triple Crown winners have been fairly short odds to win the first leg, the Queen's Plate, I thought, I wonder what our Triple Crown was like. So I went back and looked, and the longest priced winner of the Kentucky Derby that went on to win the Triple Crown was Assault in 1946. He was 8-1. Now, horses that have won the first two legs of the Triple Crown, it's a little different story. There's been some long shots, but I want to ask you, Natalie, can you think of who the longest shot was in the Derby that went on to win the Preakness and went for the Triple Crown in the Belmont, but then failed?
Well, the easy answer for me would be Charismatic at 30-1, but I don't know if somebody might have beaten him eventually and had slightly longer odds. I'm not sure. I
had a funny, I did not prep. I didn't give you any clues in this beforehand. I'm proud of the fact that you got that one. Now, why would you know that?
Well, Charismatic, as some readers will know, is the horse that got me into racing. So I remember an awful lot about the little horse, the little former claimer that a lot of people sort of forgot about a few years after he made a try. But he was an inspirational horse to a lot of people, and man, at the top of the stretch of the Belmont, I thought he had it.
Well, he was indeed the longest shot to win the first 2 legs of the Triple Crown and lose the third. Bold Venture 1936 was 20-1, and War Emblem in 2002 was 20-1. Neither one of those could complete the deal. Neither could Charismatic, though he was game in defeat that day. The Japanese Triple Crown. Let's talk a little bit about Contrail. This is a horse who's, in America we think, these Japanese horses, we don't have much, we don't know much about them. But in fact, this horse is a son of Deep Impact, who won the Triple Crown in Japan. Deep Impact is by Sunday Silence, who is one of those horses that won the first 2 legs of our Triple Crown. He was sold to the Yoshida family, became a sensational sire over there. And this horse is produced from an unbridled song mare named Rhodochrosite, I think it is, who was bred by Bob and Beverly Lewis, sold in a yearling sale. But she, in turn, was produced from Folklore, a Breeders' Cup Juvenile Fillies winner for the Lewises. So, even though this is a long ways away and it's at 1:30 or 2 in the morning or whatever, this horse Contrail does have a lot of connections to American racing.
Well, and it should be interesting to see him tested here, because I think he is trying to become, is it the 3rd undefeated horse to win the Triple Crown in Japan? And I think that's, obviously something that we don't see horses do here very often either. So it could be another sort of situation like, Winx was undefeated for a long period of time, although not her whole career. And that inspired a lot of people well beyond Australia. So if you take a look at this horse, then you might find yourself becoming a fan of a horse very far away in this situation too.
And that's a Triple Crown, kind of a traditional Triple Crown in Japan, where they start off, they go a mile in April in the Oka Sho. It's the equivalent of the 2,000 guineas, I guess. And then the Tokyo Yushun, the Derby, is a mile and a half. And then this race, I think we mentioned earlier, is even longer, a mile and 7/8. So this is a real stayers race, and only 7 have done it. And Deep Impact, as I mentioned, did it in 2005, the sire of this horse.
In the middle at the moment, Win Carnelian, joined by Satono Flag, and Contrail out wider. Salios back on the inside. Contrail goes up to Salios, and in the middle, watch Resende out wide. It's a 2-horse deal, a 2-horse battle on the outside. Contrail on the inside. Salios, Contrail, Salios. Contrail takes the Satsuki Show, wins out from Salios, and flying home late, Galore Creek in for 3rd. They get to the 400-metre mark. In the middle of the track, it's Deep Bond, joined by Contrail. My Rhapsody still whacking away, and Salios starts to chime in out wide. It's Contrail, Salios, Contrail. Contrail in front. Salios trying to get the better of it today, but Contrail's got the upper hand. Contrail, the favourite, races away. Contrail will take out the Derby, and 5 for 5. Salios 2nd. Valtradzende in for 3rd. Satono Impressa flashed up to run 4th. Then came Black Hole, followed by Galore Creek, Wakea. Then came Deep Bond, followed by...
Now, you're talking about different Triple Crowns. One country that has a Triple Crown that really it's kind of ignored is England.
Right. I think they were the originators of the concept as far as we know back in the 1800s. And they had several horses quite a few horses really sweep their Triple Crown early on. But early on as in like the mid to late 1800s, early 1900s.
I was just a kid then, so I really don't remember.
Yeah, what was it like in those days, Ray? And then the last one was Nijinsky in 1970. And the sort of prevailing theory, as far as I understand it, is that there's not a lot of interest in running in the 3rd leg, which is the St. Leger at a mile and 6 furlongs, because that's considered kind of too far to really be a useful stallion making race. The shift in England apparently it is similar to what it is here as far as a focus on speed. And so there's been horses that have won the first 2 and not even really tried to go into the 3rd race because it wouldn't add enough to their value. So it's not really... It's an honor, obviously, to win classic races in Britain, but it doesn't seem like the series itself is the goal like it might have been at some point.
Well, and I think, to be fair, late season racing has become, the calendar has gotten more crowded. Horses, instead of waiting for the St. Leger, will go to the Arc. They've got a chance to go to the Breeders' Cup. They've got the races in Asia, the Hong Kong and Japan Cup. The St. Leger is kind of a forgotten race, and it's kind of sad that a place where horse racing is so important doesn't really have a Triple Crown that's meaningful anymore. And Nijinsky was a great horse, and imagine though a horse that can win at a mile, and then later in the year win at 1 3/4 miles. I mean, that takes something, and it's a shame that the breeders look at a horse like that as something that is not that attractive to them. A horse that wins a 1 3/4 miles race.
Well, and it's sort of disappointing too, from the perspective of, you always think, or I, as an American racing fan, think of, British races and British classics as the longer sort of stamina favoring, which is really how racing evolved originally, was very long races. And it was a stayer that was valued sort of back in the day, and back in the day as in like 100 years ago. And, to see that disappear from England where it started or not disappear, but it, become less emphasized in England where it originated, is sort of like, gosh, are we going to become even more focused on speed than we already are, because we're already more sort of short distance focused even than Britain is. So it's just an interesting trend over time.
Yeah, we're trying to teach them that the races that really mean something are those 5 furlong turf sprints at Royal Ascot. Those are the races that count.
I mean, aren't they fun to watch? You blink and you miss it.
Yeah, they are. All right, well, that's going to do it for this edition of the Friday Show. Tune in on Saturday to see if Mighty Heart, the one-eyed wonder, can win the Triple Crown, the Breeders' Stakes, or maybe Josie Carroll's other horse, Belichick, who's still a maiden but ran a good second in the Queen's Plate. There's going to be an upset there. We'll see. And then late Saturday night, early Sunday morning, Contrail goes in the final leg of the Japanese Triple Crown. We'll see you next week.